Chapter 10. The Song of the Alet. The sun was beginning to rise over the rolling fields of Aden as Garrett finished the last repair to the tower's complex mechanism. A crowd had gathered outside the old outpost, curious to see if Garrett's shouts of excitement would come to fruition. The blacksmith brought Sir Wheatley, and only he, up into the tower. Garrett feared that Foxglove might be frightened by a crowd of villagers. Garrett led Sir Wheatley up the winding stairs and passages within the outpost until they came to a door. This doorway led to the room where Foxglove hid, and he bid Wheatley call to her. At first, Sir Wheatley was unsure if it would work, but he soon mustered the courage to speak her name. The fair Alet slowly emerged from the room and asked him if he was a servant of the king. She did not recognize him, for he bore no mark or symbol of rank. It was then that Sir Wheatley remembered his sword that he had carried with him from Castle Aperture. In all his wandering in the village he had kept it with him, for it was not uncommon for travellers to be armed. He drew it slowly from its sheath, and there, upon the hilt, was the symbol of the kingdom of Aperture. Foxglove's eyes grew wide, and she took his hand and bid him command her. Yet the former knight did not know what to command. He whispered to Garrett, who was standing nearby, and asked what he should bid her to do. Garrett instructed Wheatley to lead her to the upper level of the tower. The uppermost level of the tower consisted of a great dome-like structure, with pillars that supported it. From the great pinnacle, the entire countryside could be seen, and Wheatley gazed warily at the edge, fearful of its height. In the very center of the dome-like structure sat the incredible mechanism upon which Garrett had long labored to repair. It stretched up like two trees, its hinged metal branches bearing gems and mirrors that could be positioned at will. The blacksmith had spent long hours positioning them just right, so as to increase the range of the Alet's thoughts. In the center of the device was a platform where the Alet was to stand whilst speaking to others in faraway towers. Just below the upper level was constructed a system of gears and machinery which seemed to be connected to the platform in the center and gave it the ability to turn. How this was done, even Garrett was not sure. The entire inside of the dome was covered with gems, reflectors, and other gears and machinery, and Wheatley wondered at the sight. One particular reflector, which hung upon one of the pillars, was very familiar. It was tall and in the shape of an oval, and Wheatley asked the blacksmith of its origin. Garrett explained that it had been passed down to him by his father, who said that he had fashioned it from a piece of a strange stone that he had found while wandering the lands after the war. Garrett had brought it up to the tower chamber and had used it to replace another mirror that had been broken. Wheatley wondered if it might be made from the very same substance as the mirror that had entrapped him for 4 long years. Though he was curious, Sir Wheatley knew that other matters were more pressing, and he took Foxglove by the hand and gently led her to the center of the great mechanism. He then bid her operate it and speak to her fellow Alet in other villages. She looked at him with confusion, for as she gazed upon the mechanisms that had been her chief task before the war, she found that it had not been put right. Many mirrors and gems, though positioned to the best of Garrett's ability, were wrongly placed and terribly misaligned. She asked Sir Wheatley if she was permitted to reset them. Before Garrett could stop him, Wheatley answered her in the affirmative, and soon the Alet woman was running to and fro throughout the upper chamber. Garrett cried out in dismay as all of his thought-out predictions and calculations were lost as the Alet woman moved and shifted the pieces of the great apparatus. Suddenly she leapt up and stood upon the platform. Foxglove reached to the side and took hold of a lever that was amidst the apparatus, and when she pulled it, the gears began to mesh and grind beneath her feet. Suddenly sections of the dome began to raise, the reflectors upon them fanning out towards the surrounding countryside. The platform turned until the Alet woman faced west, and then came to a halt with a great din. She raised her hands, and as she did, the light of the rising sun struck one gem and then another, one mirror and then another, until the chamber was filled with brilliant light, rushing to and fro. As she stood, her long hair blew back behind her in the gathering wind, and her eyes shone with brilliant light. Garrett and Sir Wheatley stared in wonder at the Ellet woman, her expression relaying that something was happening. Garrett stepped forward and asked the Ellet if she could hear the thoughts of her fellow kind. As quickly and clearly as a ray of sun, Foxglove began to sing. She held her hands high, and her smile was bright, for it had been so long since she had heard the thoughts of another Ellet. Her voice was like the rippling water of a stream, and fell from her lips in high, clear tones. And thus did she sing. "O valley doth the sun shine, the clouds have flown away, the rain is gone ere eastward, O people do not stray. See swiftly now how she runs, the sun in all her light. From darkness flees the shadow, thus comes the hallowed bright. Sky of blue, for long you have been hiding. Sky of blue, why did you fly away? Fairest rays of summer light in the morning, tell us true, why did you go astray? O fairest of all the fellows, come now to long-lost home. In searching we have labored, rejoice no more to roam. Sky of blue, for long you have been hiding. Sky of blue, why did you fly away? Truly here is where you shall find dwelling. See your joy, our beaming faces say. O high blue light of the evening, beware, the night is nigh. Its hand of sorrow nears you, we shan't forget your light. Sky of blue, for long you have been hiding. Sky of blue, why did you fly away? For lost is found, your love she calls unto you. Live in peace until our ending day. Garrett shouted out in utter jubilation, for this song he knew was the theme of a village hundreds of miles away. Foxglove had heard it from her fellow Ellet in a far-off outpost. The tower at last had been restored. The people of the village rejoiced at their great fortune, and when Garrett and Sir Wheatley descended from the tower, they gathered round to commend the blacksmith. Yet Garrett shook his head and pointed to the former knight. Here was the hero of the day, for it was Wheatley who had spoken to Foxglove, and that had brought her song to the village. In the midst of the great celebration, Sir Wheatley caught the face of the Lady Chell. Where before had been doubt and mistrust, he now saw the greatest admiration and pride. Her smile was like the summer sun shining through a darkened window, and the beauty of it smote his heart. The Lady Chell took his hand and pulled him away from the gathering crowd. When they were alone, she embraced him. Sir Wheatley was at first taken aback, yet at last he realized that perhaps there was indeed a glimmer of hope that she could love him in return. Thus did they celebrate together, for at last the fool had found his purpose in in the village of Aden.